What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Flock Friday. I'm your host, Chase Coburn. Alongside me today, Samuel Njoku of Ravens Talk Pod. Sam, thanks for taking the time here as we prepare for the huge AFC North clash between the Ravens and the Steelers coming up.
Thanks for having me, man. It's a big game for sure for the Ravens, no doubt about it. They have to win this game, and in my opinion, they have any chance of making the postseason. So, big time game should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're going to break down the nitty gritty here. What are overall just your general thoughts as we head into what is most definitely the most important game of Baltimore's season thus far?
It's about the health of Lamar Jackson, really, right now, and I'm not trying to take too much into the fact that it looks like he got stepped on in that practice on Wednesday, but it's really the acclimation of everything that's happened the last 4 weeks of the season. He hasn't looked himself, not only from a health aspect, but from just being able to read what the defense is doing and being able to react accordingly. He just hasn't been that guy. So you're hoping that he gets healthier, hoping that he's ready to go out there and improve it against a Steelers team that has given him a lot of fits in the past. The Ravens have leaned on the run game heavily in those contests that he's won most recently. They'll probably have to do it again to have any chance of winning in Pittsburgh, against Pittsburgh.
And they should do it again. And we're going to break down exactly how dominant Baltimore's rushing offense can be if they simply do feed Derrick Henry the football and kind of mix in Keaton Mitchell as well. I know Justice Hill is on IR, but that certainly has to be the game plan ahead of this matchup. I do want to quickly talk about the playoff odds because I do think that is a conversation to have. I had a graphic, but just in general here, I'm going to pull it up just for myself. With a win, Baltimore's playoff odds go to 79%. They're currently at 63%, but with a loss, their playoff chances per Next Gen Stats go down to 32%. For Pittsburgh, they're currently at 35. With a win, they go to 66%, nearly doubled. And if they're with a loss, they're down to 19%, nearly cutting in half. So clearly there is so much at stake here for both teams when you look at those odds. Essentially, your odds double or your odds get cut in half to win the division and to make the postseason with a win for both teams here in this matchup. And I think what's really interesting is, Sam, I'm going to go to you after this. What's interesting is if Baltimore loses this game, they're 6-7. If Cincinnati is able to win their game against Buffalo this weekend, they go to 5-8. And all of a sudden, the Ravens and the Bengals play on in week 15. And all of a sudden, if the Bengals win that matchup, they're tied with Baltimore and have tiebreaker, which is not what I was anticipating with Joe Burrow out for over half the season. So are you concerned at all about the possibility of Cincinnati just creeping their way into the mix? Because it feels like if the Ravens don't win these next two games, they're pretty much doomed.
I'm not concerned about the Bengals. I am concerned about the Ravens losing the division if they don't win this contest. I think that this is like one half of the AFC North Championship game, in my opinion. I think that second one may come down to that last game of the season, Week 18. But the Bengals are a threat. They are a dangerous team. And if they were to win against Buffalo, which right now I don't consider them to be the favorites in that contest, but if they were able to pull out that contest win, and then the Ravens have to travel to Cincinnati and go up against the Bengals defense and gave them 5 turnovers. 5 turnovers the Bengals defense forced, which is by and large probably the worst defense we've ever seen in the history of the National Football League. So do I expect the Bengals to repeat that defensive effort next time around? Probably not. But I do expect Joe Burrow to get more comfortable in the pocket. I do expect him to be better at throwing the football, and those 4 field goals that the Ravens forced in the early going to that game on Thanksgiving night may become touchdowns. So yeah, the Bengals do have a shot. They don't have much of a shot. But they pick up that win against the Bills, and if the Ravens do fall to the Steelers on Sunday, could be a different outcome.
I think the Ravens defense is playing a lot better. The last time we chatted back in September, first of all, I cannot believe it's been that long since we last were on the podcast. It's your 3rd time on the program. It doesn't feel like that long. But then when you think about all that's happened since then, the Cooper Rush saga to Tyler Huntley to Lamar's recent struggles, it feels like a long time ago football-wise, chronologically. But it's great to have you back on. But, Sam, when we chatted in September, the big conversation was like, oh, my gosh, this defense is unbearable. They're a liability. And it feels like, they traded for Alohi Gilman. They've tightened things up at the bye week. And kind of like last year, the same story rings true where Zach Orr is making these midseason adjustments. And since their bye week, no team has allowed less points per game than the Baltimore Ravens. So I think their defense has really done an excellent job at tightening up. And I think that was part of the reason why they kept themselves in the game against Cincinnati. But, 5 turnovers, that is absolutely inexcusable. And I think that is the one fear I have in this game for Baltimore is this is a team in Pittsburgh that forces turnovers. They have one of the best turnover differentials in the league. In their 6 wins this season, their turnover differential is plus 16. And in their 6 losses, it's -5. So they're very rarely losing the turnover battle to a great extent. For me, if Pittsburgh wants to win this game, they have to win the turnover battle and or the time of possession, because, Sam, I got a stat for you. In all of Baltimore's 6 losses this season, they have lost the turnover battle and not control the time of possession. It takes a lot to beat Baltimore. It really does. You need to dominate those 2 variables, because outside of that, the Ravens are going to have you beat. But if you can force turnovers and keep the Ravens offense off the field for as long as you can, you're going to have a good chance of winning. Now the conversation becomes, can Pittsburgh do that, and particularly force turnovers? I know Harbaugh's been really stressing that in his career. He's 5-13 against Pittsburgh when his team commits multiple turnovers. So I think turnovers has to be the key. Samuel, are you concerned at all about TJ Watt and that defensive group really causing havoc against this Baltimore offense that has given the ball away a lot in their past few games?
I shouldn't be, but I am. I mean, the Steelers haven't really shown me outside of those numbers you mentioned with the turnover differential. Steelers defense has been a shell of themselves, at least what the Steelers pride themselves on this season. So I shouldn't be concerned, but I do understand what TJ Watt brings to the table. I do understand what that defense and that history does. I do understand the rivalry and what takes place here.
Right.
Remember last year, the first game of the season, it was the turnover by Patrick Queen that forced that fumble that really turned the tide in that contest. The Steelers won by kicking 5 field goals for Chris Boswell. I mean, that was really the difference in that contest. I don't understand how they lost that game.
Their offense couldn't score in any of those games. They scored under 20 in all 3. Yeah,
exactly. So it is going to take turnovers, like you mentioned. It's going to be the Steelers turning the football. Well, the Steelers forcing turnovers that gives them this chance to win this game. They don't really have an avenue to success, in my opinion. I don't think that Aaron Rodgers is that quarterback anymore that can put points on the board consistently on a defense like this. I don't think that defense has shown much, even though, again, they could show it. I mean, the Steelers-Ravens rivalry, they always come to play for whatever reason. But just based on what we've seen on film, what we've seen on paper, the Ravens should win this game. But again, like you mentioned, I'm not taking it for granted what TJ Watt can do. Didn't have any sacks in that game against the Bills. Could have some sacks here with that offensive line against the Ravens.
I feel like as of late, Myles Garrett has really put himself in a league of his own in terms of the best defensive players in the league, particularly on the defensive line. But there's still something about TJ Watt. I know he's a little bit older, but he is still a dog. And I feel like while Myles Garrett is an incredible force, and this is not to take away from what Myles Garrett does, but as a Baltimore Ravens fan, when I go against, you go against Myles Garrett and TJ Watt, 2 times a year each, I am always more afraid to face TJ Watt, because the biggest thing that he does is he may not get 4 sacks in a game like Myles Garrett does, but the plays that he makes are often more important and they force turnovers. He leads all defensive linemen this year on passes batted down at the line of scrimmage. That's been Lamar's biggest problem. All right, everyone loves to talk about it Lamar Jackson's passes, they're just deflected at the line, but that's part of it too. Why are your passes being able to be deflected at the line? They're kind of telegraphed a little bit, not exactly as precise. That's been a problem for him throughout his entire career. TJ Watt does that better than any player. Lamar Jackson has also had more lost fumbles than any player in the league or any quarterback in the league going back since the 2023 season. And TJ Watt is that guy in terms of forcing fumbles, particularly against Lamar Jackson. So he may not be the same force he was 2 or 3 years ago, but TJ Watt is still a playmaker on the defensive end. And he seems to get to Lamar Jackson. I mean, I don't have the stats in front of me, but it's very rare that Lamar Jackson doesn't commit at least 1 turnover against this Pittsburgh team. Not that you can't win a game by committing 1 turnover, but again, once you commit multiple turnovers, your chances significantly decrease. To me, I don't think Pittsburgh can win this game if they don't either win the turnover battle or win the time of possession, which, by the way, I would be shocked if they have more time of possession than Baltimore, because this season, while the Ravens are, a subpar team in terms of time of possession, Pittsburgh is last in time of possession and last in plays. So for me, if the Ravens just go and they run the football, less chances of turnovers, a higher percentage of just being able to go out there and dominate against a real lackluster linebacking core in Pittsburgh, and you'd have a higher chance of just really controlling the pace of the game and, frankly, controlling the entire football game in terms of the time of possession mark. So for me, that has to be the key for Baltimore. If Pittsburgh doesn't have one of those two variables go their way, the Ravens are undefeated when those variables have gone their way this season. And I don't think Pittsburgh has another true advantage that can separate themselves from Baltimore if they can't execute in those two categories.
Yeah, Mike Tomlin knows that. I think he understands that. And that's why I'm a little nervous about what the game plan is going to be for Pittsburgh. The Pittsburgh Steelers know the Ravens are going to try and run the football. Could you see more 8, 9 guys in the box for the Steelers? They want to muck this game up a little bit, make it a little dirty, a little grimy in Baltimore on Sunday, and make it so that you're putting the onus on Lamar Jackson to
which
throw
is
the football.
Insane to think about. Like you're
Crazy.
You're forcing the 2-time rating first team All Pro to pass the football, but that has to be the strategy given the way that Lamar's played recently and the way that they defended the run last week. What was it, 51 carries for 249 yards? It's crazy that the strategy should be let the 2-time MVP beat you.
Yeah, but that's how it has to be. Again, you mentioned it. Right. They're last in time of possession. They need to give Aaron Rodgers more chances with this offense to get things going, and they need to keep the ball out of the hands of Derrick Henry. And how do you do that? You stop him on second and long, third and short, whatever it takes to keep the ball out of Lamar Jackson's hands. In that aspect, and when you put the ball in his hands, make sure that he's throwing the football, and that's pretty much the avenues for success. Now, what does that mean? That means Lamar Jackson needs to be the Lamar Jackson of old. He needs to be able to be more pinpoint accurate in his passes. He needs to be reading the defense better. He needs to know the difference between a cover 2 and a cover 6 after the snap. Those are the type of things that you want to see from Lamar, something that he's had success with the last 2 years, but for whatever reason, the last 4 or 5 weeks, he's just regressed a little bit. I'm not sure if he's just a little antsy out there. He's going to be more antsy because we know what Pittsburgh Steelers like to do. They like to rush the passer. Hasn't had that success the last couple of weeks, but still think that Steelers defense could give Lamar Jackson trouble if he's not prepared. And missing that Thursday practice definitely makes me a little concerned because that means he's not having those reps with his ones, not having time on the football field to get ready for this big-time contest.
I mean, I think it's the 7th week this season or 8th week this season that Lamar Jackson has missed at least one day of practice. Obviously, he missed those 3 games with the hamstring injury, but then 4 lower body injuries as well have kind of been hindering his success a little bit. It feels like there's something else that pops up every single week. But Samuel, a lot of people want to blame the offensive line, and the offensive line has certainly not helped Lamar Jackson, but Lamar struggled as of late. He has not played well in his past few games, and for those who want to blame the offensive line, to me, I'm just the quarterback that I've watched now for 8 seasons. Lamar has never had his play truly regress because of his supporting cast. He won a unanimous MVP with Marquise Brown and Willie Snead as his leading receivers. Like, Lamar has never been a guy whose success has been dictated by his teammates. That's why he's always been in MVP conversations, because he is not a byproduct of the system. He is the system. So I don't think it's the offensive line. It has to be the injuries, right? That are the reason why Lamar Jackson has not played as well. And I also want to bring this up too. He is 27th in the NFL in success rate over the past 4 weeks with a clean pocket. So it almost feels like he's just kind of uncomfortable back there. Kind of break that down to me. Why do you think Lamar Jackson isn't playing as well? Because some of these plays I feel like aren't on his teammates, particularly last Thursday night. He just missed throws.
Yeah, long story short, it is the injuries, but if you look deeper, there's a lot of things going on. The offensive line, as you mentioned, has been a concern. And the reason why I say it's more of a significance now than in the past is because it's the run blocking that is causing the issues. The Ravens are not running the football as effectively as they have done in the past. When you run the football with a Derrick Henry, with a Gus Edwards, with the J.K. Dobbins, it doesn't matter. As long as you're getting successful run plays going, you can use play action. Have that clean pocket. Be comfortable in the pocket because you know that the defense is going after the running back. When Lamar Jackson's healthy, you can run the football, maybe not have success with Derrick Henry, but at least the defense still fears what Lamar Jackson can do with his legs. Defenses are not playing to stop Lamar Jackson running the football because they know that he's injured. They know that he's not going to be tucking and running. The Ravens didn't run any read option plays against the Bengals last week. They didn't run any read option plays because Lamar Jackson's hurt. They don't feel comfortable with him running the football scripted. Now, unscripted, when there's a blitz coming, when he needs to extend plays, they have to have the confidence. Right, exactly. But as far as game planning for the defense, to have Lamar Jackson be a threat with his leg, it hasn't been there for the last couple of weeks. So injuries are huge in that aspect. So this is the first time in a long time that Lamar Jackson has had to be the guy in the pocket and construct the offense without the threat of the run. And that's very difficult for any quarterback to do, let alone a quarterback in this style of offense.
But for me, I mean, these next 2 weeks, it is absurd that the Ravens only gave Derrick Henry, I think, what was it, 11 touches against Cincinnati. I mean, absurd when he was averaging nearly 10 yards a play between the 144-yard reception and then all of his success with 10 carries for 60 yards on the ground. He was just doing it all, the early touchdown, and they went away from him. He didn't have a single carry in the second or the fourth quarter, and they seemed to abandon the rushing attack, where it's like, where have I heard this before? Multiple offensive coordinators, multiple seasons, multiple big games. Feels like it's the same, horrid nightmare story on repeat with this team. But for me, if the Ravens are really smart and you look at Lamar Jackson missing practice, and you see that he is not 100%, and you need him to be 100% for those final 3 games, and then possibly a postseason push if they're able to get there. Most certainly he needs to be healthy if the Ravens are in the playoffs. For me, the easiest way to make sure he's healthier is make sure he needs to do less in these next few matchups. Lamar Jackson should not need to be the focal point of offense against Pittsburgh or against Cincinnati in these next 2 games. Both of those teams cannot stop the run. Unless Mike Tomlin comes on the field and starts tripping players again, they have absolutely no hope to stop Derrick Henry and Keaton Mitchell on the ground.
You're knocking it. Your hand claps. That was great. Go ahead. Keep going. Sorry.
Lamar should pass 15 to 20 times max in this matchup. Give Derrick Henry 20, 25 carries. And I think that's the most interesting thing is people don't understand. This shouldn't take away from what Lamar Jackson does, but more epitomize how great Derrick Henry is. In his career in Baltimore, the Ravens are 12-1 when they give him 20 or more carries, and they're scoring 29 points per game in those contests. I mean, it even just showed last year against Pittsburgh. They only gave him 13 carries, and he only took it for 65 yards against Pittsburgh. Still an efficient mark, but only 13 carries, and they lost that game 18-16 in Cincinnati, as you mentioned earlier. And they did so because of an early fumble, and they again let one mistake let the entire playbook change, let the entire script of the game change. But then they gave him 24 carries in their regular season finale against Pittsburgh, and then 26 carries in the playoffs against Pittsburgh, and he had 162 and 186-yard games, and the Ravens won each of those games by multiple scores. So there is a direct correlation between giving Derrick Henry carries and finding success in this offense. Kind of on the flip side, Ravens are 7-11 when Derrick Henry doesn't get 20 or more carries. I feel like with this Ravens team, for as complicated a league as the NFL is, the way that they win and lose games is the most simple. If you're looking at this game and you're looking at Cincinnati, Lamar doesn't need to be the face. Give it to Derrick Henry. Create some lanes, try some things out. And I don't care what this offensive line does. Neither of those teams can stop the run. That needs to be paramount in these next few matchups, not Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, again, Hank, that's literally took the words right out of my head. The Ravens these next 2 weeks have been gifted opponents that can give you a chance to get Lamar Jackson healthy. Pittsburgh Steelers, Cincinnati Bengals, both of those teams are horrendous against the run. Establish the run early, get an early lead, and just pound the rock for these next 2 weeks. As you mentioned, 15 to 20 passes is all you need from Lamar Jackson. Give 20 opportunities for Lamar Jackson to put himself at risk for a potential hit. And all those other plays, Lamar Jackson should be handing the ball off to either Derrick Henry, Keaton Mitchell, Rasheen Ali, whoever it is. These next 2 weeks, paramount for Lamar Jackson to get healthy before he starts this run against the Patriots, against the Packers, and then closing it out against the Steelers team again, who has difficulty stopping the run.
How in the world did Rasheen Ali have more touches than both Derrick Henry and Keaton Mitchell last week? I mean, Samuel, I got to ask you, between that and not running the ball in some spots, and look, it feels like, why are we blaming the OC again when this was the same problem under Greg Roman? But do you think it's time to move on from Todd Monken? Because it feels like he has his highs and he has his lows, but it feels like some of these decisions don't add up. Like, why does Derrick Henry have 10 carries and not a single carry in the second quarter when the game is at your fingertips against one of the worst rushing defenses in the entire National Football League? Like, I can't fathom that.
I can't speak to why Derrick Henry didn't get the carries, but I will give him a little bit of grace with the Rasheen Ali thing because, again, Derrick Henry's not great in pass protection. Neither is Keaton Mitchell. So Rasheen Ali is the pass protecting back, and therefore in passing downs and passing situations, you want Rasheen Ali on the field because he's your only back who has the ability to pass block and protect Lamar Jackson. But when this happened, the Ravens were only down by 5 points. You could have used Derrick Henry, run the football, establish it, and therefore not need Rasheen Ali all those times. So again, this goes back to 2023. I always go back to that game because it was the game that really opened my eyes to what the Ravens are about. They get scared when the team has an early lead. They get scared when the opposing quarterback is an elite QB, and they just go away from the game plan. I'm pretty sure the game plan coming into this game was to run the football down the Bengals' throats and not put Lamar Jackson in harm's way. But
They
Joe
didn't
Burrow
execute
gets an
that.
early lead. Yep. Fumble within the 5-yard line. Oh, all of a sudden, there's panic. The Bengals are threatening to put points on the board, and then you go away from that. So, yeah, Todd Monken needs to answer for that. Not only Todd Monken, but John Harbaugh as well, who leads this whole thing.
For sure. And now I ask you, I mean, we had the same conversation about John Harbaugh the last time around. In fact, you shout out to Samuel on Ravens Talk Pod. If you don't check out his Twitter and all of his social media accounts, I don't know what you're doing. Go check them out right now. But we had that one video go for, I think, 1 million views or close to it, where I kind of called out John. And I'm like, maybe it's not working anymore. And, I got to give him credit. I call balls and strikes. I think John has done a great job at, helping this group respond after a 1-5 start. It's very easy for the wheels to fall off, but that is a key sign of a veteran head coach who knows maybe how to control things when they're about to fall apart. Maybe not mid-game, but mid-season when you're 1-5 and Lamar's out again and you feel like everything's about to fall apart. John did a really great job at stabilizing things, the 5-game win streak, and now they're back in the mix. But I understand the injuries, but they shouldn't have even been in that spot in the first place. They shouldn't have been 1-5. They shouldn't have lost that game to Buffalo. They shouldn't have lost that game to Detroit. They should have given at least a little bit of a better effort or made adjustments against Kansas City. So I guess my question to you here is, we have two head coaches who both fan bases are tired of in this matchup, with John Harbaugh in Baltimore, Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. Both are staples. Both are possibly future Hall of Famers. And they're facing off for, I think, the 39th time, something absurd, something along those lines, coming up this week. What do we make of kind of the head coaching conversation here? One of the biggest rivalries in sports, and I think also one of the most controversial topics in sports, is both fan bases are really they've been calling for their heads this year.
Yeah, some of that is, you can't be in a league with the same team for almost 20 years, which Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh has done, and only have one championship to show for it. I think it starts there. John Harbaugh had that 2012 championship, Mike Tomlin a little bit after that, and not much since. Tomlin hasn't won a playoff game in quite some time. John Harbaugh has won a playoff game, but hasn't really done so consistently enough. So the angst from Ravens fans and Steelers fans, I get it. Can't be tenured in that position for that long, and only one championship each to show for it in that regard. Now, to go back to this season, I think that John Harbaugh is still under the microscope. I think some of the issues with this team does fall on Eric DeCosta, but I think John Harbaugh does own some of the blame. And you and I talked about it at the beginning of the season. If you don't win a championship here, you are on the chopping block, in my opinion. Now, what makes John Harbaugh great? What does everybody say? Oh, what does John Harbaugh do? He's not an offensive mind. He's not a defensive mind. He's a guy that can squeeze the orange juice and get the most out of that. And this is the time to do it. You're 6-6 heading into this game. You got a chance to push this team to the postseason. This is what John Harbaugh does best. He knows how to react, respond, get the troops going, lead the team to its postseason trip. Mike Tomlin, same way, but John Harbaugh has the better pieces. He has the better roster. He definitely has the better chance to go the distance with this thing. But again, my opinion hasn't changed. If you don't win the championship, if you don't at least get to the AFC Championship game, I don't care what the ramifications were dealing with injuries and stuff. You got your QB, you got the majority of your core players still intact, saving Namdi Madubuike. You get to that championship, or else time's up.
Yeah, I think at some point it's almost like, how long are you going to try this? How many failed experiments are you going to have? And I guess what drives me nuts is I was recently on the Charm City Sideline podcast, and those are great guys on there. I have a few Instagram reels of them currently out on my page, but one of the things I brought up is, like, I feel like the guy who everyone's calling for in Baltimore, I feel like that it fluctuates. It varies who that is. 1 year it's Lamar because of the pick six in Buffalo in 2020. The next year it's Tyler Huntley because of his fumble, turn touchdown at the goal line. The next year it's Zay Flowers for his fumble at the goal line. The next year it's Mark Andrews for his fumble and his drop in the playoffs. And then it's Derrick Henry with, his fumble in the regular season that blew the game against Buffalo. And then it's Isaiah Likely for his fumble at the goal line against Cincinnati, which, by the way, why do the Ravens always lose so many games at the 1 yard line? Like,
annoying.
It is exhausting, but different conversation for a different day. But I guess that's my biggest problem with John Harbaugh is, like, why are the same things happening with different people? If it's the same guy, right? If it was Lamar making the mistake every time, or Zay making the mistake every time, or Andrews making the mistake every time, that's a different discussion. Maybe it's a personnel issue. But when the mistakes are coming from different people and from different coordinators, what is the common denominator? It's John Harbaugh. And so I guess that is what the biggest problem is. And it maybe makes you wonder, can this work? And not that he's a bad coach and not that he shouldn't be respected for what he's done in Baltimore. He certainly should, right? You don't have staying power for a team with 18 years and win a Super Bowl and have this kind of success if you're not really a historic guy for this franchise. So he should be given a ton of credit for that. But at the same time, sometimes your time runs out, and we could be near that point with John Harbaugh. But Samuel, do you think we're at that point? And I will open this up to callers and people in the chat as well. We'd love to engage with you guys here. But Samuel, do you think the time is up for Mike Tomlin as well? I had a big discussion with Matt King, another big Ravens creator, on my podcast this week, and he was essentially saying like he thinks they should get rid of everybody, have a completely a clean house in Pittsburgh. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts about whether or not it's time for Tomlin to go in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I love Matt. Matt's absolutely right. Yeah. The Steelers' best chance to get back to who they are is to blow the whole thing up. I mean, this plug and play with the QB situation, ever since Ben Roethlisberger retired, has not worked. It hasn't even been close to working. So yes, you missed on Kenny Pickett. You missed on Mason Rudolph. You got to attack the draft aggressively. Trade up to the top 5 pick. Whatever you need to do, trade assets away. Trade TJ Watt if you have to, whatever it takes. Get yourself a quarterback. Start over from scratch and build yourself back to that championship pedigree that you once had. Lamar Jackson was a godsend for the Ravens, because if not, the Ravens were going to be in the same situation. Luckily, Ozzie Newsome did a great job. That's why you don't see the Ravens making those extravagant deals for a Quinnen Williams or Micah Parsons, because they want to be competitive every single year. And how to do that, how to construct their roster and finances the way they have is such that they didn't need to be in the situation the Steelers are in. But the Steelers are already in that situation. So blow it up. Get rid of the head coach if you want to. Fine, sure, whatever. He's not going to be competing very much longer with this approach. Find yourself a quarterback, develop him, and then start over from scratch.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of why I haven't been blaming Tomlin as much as I have Harbaugh, because Harbaugh's had the rosters. He's had the best roster in the NFL multiple times with Pro Bowlers, and he's had the MVP of the league, what should have been 3 times. I guess you could say the best quarterback in the league by first team All-Pro. He's had that 3 times. An incredible team. He's had great coordinators, which he did hire, but it felt like he's had the system and the team in place multiple times, and he hasn't gotten it done, and the same problems continue to pop up. I'm not saying that Mike Tomlin, frankly, I'm not as in tune with Tomlin's situation as I am Harbaugh's, obviously. But I guess for me, the thing with Tomlin that maybe gives him more of the benefit of the doubt is like people are saying, well, he only won a Super Bowl with Ben Roethlisberger. What head coach has won a Super Bowl with if it wasn't with a great quarterback, it was certainly with a great defense or a great individual player. Like, obviously, you need the pieces. You can't just win a head coach you can't win a Super Bowl as a head coach just on your own. And for me, that's a silly argument. Like, should Andy Reid be scrutinized because he didn't win Super Bowls before Patrick Mahomes got there? Should Bill Belichick be scrutinized because he didn't win Super Bowls before Tom Brady got there? So for me, it's just a matter of look at the quarterbacks he's had since Big Ben's left. Whether it's because of injuries or because they've gotten cut or whatnot, they have had a different quarterback in week 1 and in week 18 for 4 consecutive seasons. Then if something happens to Rodgers, that could be 5 consecutive seasons here for Pittsburgh. Like, that's not a sustainable method. It's like people are blaming Mike Tomlin for not winning playoff games, but I guess I go back and I look at the rosters he's been given. I look at the way that the front office has completely mismanaged the situation, not provided him with a quarterback, and I ask, what playoff game would you have liked him to win? Would you like to go on the road and beat a Baltimore team that was a formidable opponent and probably the best in the AFC last year if they don't shoot themselves in the foot? Would you have wanted him to go into Buffalo and beat the Bills when they were one of the best teams in the AFC the year before? Would you have wanted him to go into Kansas City and beat the 2-time reigning AFC champion Chiefs with an aging Ben Roethlisberger in his final season? So again, obviously, Mike Tomlin, at some point, your message can run out. Your staying power, obviously. At some point, you sometimes want to make a change. But I also feel like Tomlin has a little bit more excuses, and people aren't acknowledging that enough. I don't feel like he is the problem in Pittsburgh. I just don't think this team is good enough. And that's why I think this connects really well to this matchup here between the Ravens and the Steelers. Samuel, tell me if I'm wrong. Unless the Steelers dominate in one category. Like, they are by far the inferior team to Baltimore. Like, if the Ravens stick to their game plan, they could put in Tyler Huntley and they'd still win the football game. I genuinely believe that. So I don't believe this game should be close if the Ravens stick to what they do. Because when they did that last year, they ran the ball at such a high level and, continuously with Derrick Henry. Look at the results. They won by 17 points and by 14 points. I really do feel like this will be a blowout if the Ravens stick with the game plan.
The Ravens are a much better team. There's no question about it. But I always go back to last year. The Ravens are a much better team in 2024, and they found a way to lose to the Steelers. So it's going to be interesting. If everything was as it was, if it was two different teams, two different colored jerseys, not a rivalry, I would say, yeah, the Ravens dog walk the Steelers. But it's Pittsburgh, and they'll find a way. But to your point, yeah, they put talent on here. I would still say, Ravens just need to run the football. It's not like Derrick Henry's hurt or Keaton Mitchell's hurt. The offensive line just needs to do their job, block professionally, block consistently, give Derrick Henry and Keaton Mitchell a chance to make plays, and they should get the job done. But we've seen them fail before. Hopefully it doesn't happen again.
What do we make of Aaron Rodgers in this matchup? Because obviously, I think at 41 years old, he's not the same guy that he was a few years ago when he won.
42.
42 now it is. Wow. You know what? It happens to the best of us. But you know what? For Aaron Rodgers, a 4-time MVP, a guy who is, a top 10 quarterback of all time, almost undisputedly, a guy who will obviously be a Hall of Famer and one of the greatest we've ever seen. What do we make of Aaron Rodgers at this point? Because to me, I'm going to go to you first, then I'll give my analysis on this. I feel like there are very easy ways to shut him down, particularly when Pittsburgh made the awful decision to get rid of George Pickens and bring in DK Metcalf. What a catastrophic mess that has been, and how both parties have won that agreement. And then you don't give him a wide receiver too, and the running backs are inconsistent. I feel like between Rodgers aging and the supporting cast that he has, there's not much he has to work with.
Rodgers is done. He is old. I can't imagine being 42 years old. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting there. My body's already feeling a little weak. Obviously, I'm not the athlete that Aaron Rodgers is, but I can't imagine going out there on Sundays and going up against 20-year-old pass rushers and 22-year-old safeties and 21-year-old cornerbacks and expecting to be effective in this sport that requires such energy, youth, and athleticism. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is done. This was a terrible job by Pittsburgh to get. They could have got Sam Darnold. There wasn't a single other quarterback they could have got. So, in my opinion, yeah, the Ravens can do a lot to slow this down. Very similar Aaron Rodgers game is to Russell Wilson when he was in Pittsburgh last year. The only difference is, Aaron Rodgers can't really throw the ball deep like that, not at least effectively enough, or the pass catchers aren't doing their job and coming down with it. Whatever the case is, this Steelers offense is not great. It is putrid. It's very different from the issues that the Ravens are having. Obviously, the Ravens are having difficulties passing the football as well, but it is more of, just getting together and getting things going. There is no light at the end of the tunnel with the Steelers offense. They're just trying to tread water and hope that this defense turns it around and carries them to the postseason.
It's crazy. You talk about Aaron Rodgers, the deep ball that, made him one of the greatest of all time. Average depth of target this season among the 29 quarterbacks who have played at least 250 snaps. Aaron Rodgers has the lowest average depth of target in the NFL this season. And for me, that's going to be the key here is you have to create pressure on Aaron Rodgers because even though he's a veteran and he knows how to play in these circumstances, he has been, without a doubt, the worst quarterback in the NFL this season against pressure. Among 33 qualified QBs per Next Gen Stats, Rodgers is dead last, 33rd in completion percentage, 31st in passer rating, and 32nd in yards per attempt. Again, among 33 qualifying quarterbacks against pressure. He lacks mobility. He's not the same thrower he used to be. So if the Ravens do the right things against this Steelers offense, you're right. They're just treading water. Like there really isn't an area that I see where they could just go and have a fantastic game. I mean, look at their best offensive games of the season this year, right? The times where they've been going for 30 plus. The Jets, they scored 34. Mazel tov, you're playing the Jets. You went for 31 against the Bengals. Mazel tov, you're playing the Bengals. Like against a Baltimore defense that has really tightened up as of late. Again, unless they force turnovers, I can't see them being able to do much against this Ravens defensive unit with Rodgers' age and the supporting cast he's been given. And I feel like it's just epitomizing the awful job that Omar Khan has done, the general manager in Pittsburgh. The highest paid defense in the history of the NFL. That group has underperformed expectations, completely mismanaged. Again, the DK Metcalf, George Pickens situation. Metcalf has been a disappointment, and Pickens has been one of the best receivers in the league, over in Dallas. So he's just really has not done a great job, and he's really holding the Steelers team back, quite a bit. And if he didn't spend so much money on the defense, he could have gone out and got a guy like Sam Darnold, who would be a lot better in the system than a 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers is. Right here, I see a comment. What's up, Sam? If you all have not done it, let's definitely get Chase with you and Kevin on Locked On Ravens. Yeah, that would be certainly a lot of fun. The three of us on the panel. I know Kevin, I know Sam. We'll talk behind the scenes. We'll get back to Prodigy and Havoc. That'll be a behind the scenes conversation. But yeah, I mean, Samuel, do you think that there's any if they don't dominate in terms of the turnover category, in what ways do you think the Steelers can really develop a strong attack offensively on Sunday?
I don't see it. I truly do not see a way in which, unless DK Metcalf is running down the field wide open from a busted coverage, I truly do not see the Steelers scoring more than 20 points on the Ravens on Sunday. And all that means is that the Ravens need to score 3 touchdowns, and I think this game is pretty much well ahead. The Steelers just don't have it on offense, especially, I mean, again, you pointed out that they put points up against the Jets. I think that was week 1 of the season.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they put up those points against the Jets now, even though the Jets are still one of the lesser teams in the league. And the Bengals, they put up points. Yeah, of course, everybody's going to put up points against the Bengals, except for the Ravens, apparently, on Thanksgiving, but that's neither here nor there. The point is, Steelers offense, I just don't see it. I've been looking for ways. I'm more of a half glass empty type of guy when it comes to these rivalry matchups. In this particular case, I am just very convinced that this Steelers offense just does not have what it takes against this team. And unless they force turnovers, like what the Bengals had to do, forcing 5 turnovers. 5, which is crazy. It's been a week. I still can't get over the fact that the Ravens gave up 5 turnovers. But if the Steelers were to do the same, perhaps the Steelers have a chance. But if not, no dice.
Yeah, I mean, you even just go. I mean, Pittsburgh. I think Baltimore's biggest weakness defensively, and it was a bad part of their defense in 2023. No one wanted to talk about it, and no one wants to talk about it now. I don't think the Ravens can stop the run, and sometimes statistics aren't indicative of that because the Ravens can go ahead and rushing yardage per game is more a byproduct of carry. So I don't like using rushing yards per game a lot. If you're a team that really doesn't face the run a lot, but in terms of yards per carry and from an efficiency standpoint, I really don't think Baltimore has done a good job against the run. It feels like they're either making plays at the line or giving up, 10-yard, 15-yard plays on these runs or these shorter screens. And look, I think Jalen Warren's a really solid guy, but Pittsburgh is, 31st, 30, they're 28th in the NFL in rushing yards per game. So I just don't see an avenue. For me, that would be the only way they could really get things going, control the time of possession. But when you don't have a good rushing attack and you don't have an efficient rushing attack, it's very, very hard to get things going. So I really do think Pittsburgh is in a pickle. The only thing, again, that can change things is obviously the turnovers. But Sam, what element will the rivalry have in this game? It's Ravens-Steelers. Like, you could argue this is the biggest rivalry in all of sports. And even though it's in Baltimore and Ray Lewis is the legend of the game and all of that, you know that things are going to get heated between these two teams. They do not like each other.
I think that it's going to come down to running the football and stopping the run. I think the Ravens are going to run the football early. I think that's going to bring that intensity, that dynamic that Ravens fans and Steelers fans love to see from those teams. It's going to be about imposing your will. I think that's where the rivalry comes in. If that rivalry ignites the Steelers defense enough where they can be effective in terms of stopping the run, then you can find yourself in one of those slobber knocker slugfest where it's 16-13. But if the Ravens challenge the Steelers to stop the run and the Steelers fade and they don't succeed, it could be a long day for the gold and black here. I think the Steelers could be in a lot of trouble. So I know the emphasis on the Steelers side, stop the run, whatever it takes. And I know the goal on the Ravens side, because Todd Monken and John Harbaugh have spoken on this, is to keep the ball out of the hands of the opposing team.
After a 4-1 start, and a lot of people thought when Pittsburgh started 4-1, like, okay, maybe this team's a little bit different. But I kept trying to tell everyone it was a byproduct of an easy schedule since they started 4-1. 5 losses, 2 wins. You have a 2-5 record in your last 7 games. So this team is not coming in with a lot of momentum. 2 extremely disappointing losses to Chicago and to Buffalo, and your only win comes against Joe Flacco and the Cincinnati Bengals. So I think that things are going to get interesting. Again, if they don't force turnovers, I feel like we keep repeating ourselves, but if they don't force turnovers, I think it's going to be very hard for them to go out and win this football game. All right, Samuel Njoku, before we wrap things up, I need a prediction and a score for Sunday's game.
I'm going to go 30-17 Ravens.
Okay.
I think the Ravens run the football effectively. I don't think the Steelers can stop them. Maybe the Ravens have a turnover, but I don't think it'll be the turnover after turnover 5 or 6 or whatever the number will be that will cause the Steelers to have any shot in this game. I don't trust Aaron Rodgers to lead this team to multiple scores. I just think there's going to be one of those games where the Ravens just take over and the Steelers are left wondering what's next for the head coach.
For me, I got 26-16 in favor of Baltimore. I don't think they can score 30 points right now, particularly against this defense. And the only other element that we really haven't brought up much is that I feel like there are two teams where mistakes lead to more mistakes for Lamar Jackson. And it's Pittsburgh and it's Kansas City. Yeah. And I feel like Lamar can't beat Pittsburgh. I feel like that whole narrative was shut down when Lamar picked up 2 wins late in the year, particularly against the playoffs where he played well, but he didn't need to play a major role in those games. By the slight chance that the running game doesn't work and Baltimore does need to go to Jackson, I think we will learn a lot about him. He struggled as of late, hasn't played, the highest quality of football in his career, and Pittsburgh's been able to shut him down in the past. If this game is on the shoulders of Lamar Jackson, I know this sounds insane to say, I'm not as confident as if it's Derrick Henry and Keaton Mitchell dictating the pace. So I think that's the only element that could change things. But you're right. I don't think Pittsburgh could score enough. And I think this Ravens defense has really tightened up. I'm going to go 26-16 Flock. And hopefully they pick up a huge W this Sunday to not only move into, officially first place in the AFC North, like owning tiebreaker and all of that, but not only that, but to put yourself in a position, where you are, clearly, controlling your own destiny and in a really good spot to win it when it matters most. Samuel Njoku, thank you so much for taking the time here today, hopping on the program. And again, certainly a lot to talk about. We could go for another 42 minutes if we both had the time in our schedules. So I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Chase, for having me. Always a pleasure. Hope to get on here real soon and talk more Ravens, hopefully after the Ravens pulling up with a couple of wins ahead of the rest of the division.
For sure. And for all those listening, please be sure to check out Samuel's work, obviously on Twitter, but particularly YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. And he's got some really big followings over there. And, in some of his most viewed videos, you may find a familiar face on there as well. So please be sure to check him out alongside Samuel Njoku of Ravens Talk Podcast. You know who I am. I am your host, Chase Coburn, saying so long from Flock Friday. Have a great weekend of football. And as always, go Ravens. Let's go, boys.